Have you ever stopped and thought about what exactly is money? Why is it that we can take a dollar bill and go and buy a candy bar from a vending machine with a dollar bill? Or why is it a dollar bill? Why isn't it a piece of gold? Or why isn't it something like a rock from outside? Or why isn't it some other good? Well, it's because we've adopted in the United States the use of money. So in this video, we're going to talk about what exactly is money. First off, money is anything that is generally accepted and commonly used as a means of payment. Over the years and over time and in different places throughout the world, we have different types of money. We see that oftentimes cattle are still used in the nomadic tribes of Africa as a form of money. People buy and sell things using live cattle. After World War II, whenever the currencies in Europe pretty much plummeted, we found that people actually began using tobacco as money. If you think about it in the prison system, oftentimes tobacco or cigarettes might be used as currency. You're buying or selling things for tobacco. In China, for a long time, they used steel wheels. They would get these big stone tablets, and that would be their form of currency. That's how they bought and sold things, was using these stone wheels. So in each one of these cases, people can buy and sell things. It was commonly accepted and generally used as a means of payment in order to acquire goods. So money can be anything that is generally accepted and commonly used. In the United States, we use dollar bills and nickels and dimes and coins. In other countries, they might, like in Mexico, they use pesos. In Europe, they use the euro. In Great Britain, they use the pound. And they might have different names, but the same principle applies in every country. It is commonly used throughout that country and is generally accepted across that country as a means of payment. So it doesn't really matter what the object is, as long as it is commonly used and is a generally accepted means of payment. Now, money has three critical roles that we're going to talk about. The first one is a medium for exchange. The second one is going to be a store of wealth. And the last one is a basis for record keeping. So these three items that we already just listed right here are the three critical roles of money. Let's start off with the first one, a medium for exchange. So if you ever thought what life would be without money, what would you do without money? If we didn't have any money, how would you get goods? Well, you could work for them. And you could work so long for somebody and then they give you something. Or you could trade one good for another, right? So, a medium for exchange without money is we would have to use the barter system where we are literally trading one good for another. If I wanted to get a chicken, I would have to trade hogs for it. Or if I wanted wheat, I would have to trade butter for it or something like that. You are literally trading one good for another one in the barter system. We really don't use the barter system, especially not in a modern economy. In a modern economy, we use specialization in trade in order to do all of our objects. So without barter, without money, you would have to have a lot of different objects. Because let's say you wanted good A from this person over here. For you to get good A, I would have to trade something with this person that he finds of equal or greater value than the good that he is holding. So let's say he has butter, and I want that butter, and I want to trade something for that butter. I would have to have something he finds of enough value that he is willing to trade his butter for my good through the barter system. In a modern economy, we really can't do that, because if you think about what we do nowadays, we specialize in something. Everybody has their job. Everybody does one particular good. We don't see a lot of people who have a whole lot of things. And a great example of that is in the United States, farmers and ranchers have tended to move away from multi-animal, multi-crop farms to a single crop or a single set of animal. So you think about it nowadays, you don't have sheep and cattle ranches. Or you don't have a ranch who has sheep, cattle, and hogs, all three of them, and a lot of them, they would rather have just cattle or just hogs or just sheep. Farmers are the same way. They used to have multiple of different types of crops. Now they have just corn or just cotton or just sugar beets or something of that nature. So we become more specialized, and we trade or become more specialized within our trade. So what does money do? It allows us to trade one good for another. It allows us to trade the value of one good for another. So if this was the barter system and you were a rancher and you needed a tractor, you would literally have to trade your cows for that tractor. Well, what if the owner of the tractor doesn't want those cows? Well, then you can't make that trade. But with using money, rather, what you can do is you can sell those cattle and get that value, or sell those cattle for that value and obtain that money, and then turn around and take that money and exchange that for the value of the tractor. So what it does with money, it allows us to trade the value of one good for another. So we can literally exchange cattle for a tractor now without trying to say, well, we'll give you 352 cows for one tractor. Well, now we can say, we'll just sell 352 cows, get the money, and then buy the tractor with it. And for money to work as a medium for exchange, for whatever type of money there is to work as a medium for exchange, it must be, one, generally acceptable. Just like money is in the United States and dollar bills are in the United States. Well, think about it this way. What if a quarter of the country accepted a dollar, another quarter accepted some other random currency, let's call it a shkebab or something like that. We have another quarter accepting just the Mexican peso and another quarter of the United States accepting the Canadian dollar. What if all four of these quarters are all within the United States, but the dollar that you get here in one segment of the country does not transfer over to the shish kebab in another one? Or you can't exchange the dollar bill for the Mexican peso or anything like that. For a currency to work and for money to work as money and to be a medium for exchange, it must be generally acceptable. Why does it work in the United States? Well, you can go anywhere in the United States and you know that a dollar is going to be the same and be accepted anywhere. It must be high value relative to size. So in China, when they had these stone wheels, the stone wheels were rather large in comparison to how much they were actually worth in value. So as a result, these stone wheels didn't work that well because people would have to carry around, instead of wallets, they would have to carry around wheelbarrows in order to buy anything. But something like a dollar is high in value relative to its size. Think about it this way. You've got a $100 bill that literally weighs just a fraction of a pound, but yet it can buy so many objects. So it is of a high value within a relatively small size. Must be divisible into small parts. You must be able to take this currency and divide it up into small parts. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to buy small things. So like the dollar bill or the $100 bill, let's say you couldn't divide a $100 bill up, but you would actually have to buy anything of $100 or greater in value in order to get anything. Well, that doesn't really work, right? Because what if you want to go and buy an ice cream cone? Well, now you can't buy an ice cream cone because you can't divide the $100 up into small parts. But if we have the dollar system, which we have, where you can divide up that $100 into 50s and 10s and 20s and 1s and 5s and pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters, it can be divided into small parts, allowing you to buy small things. And it must be difficult to counterfeit. Because if it wasn't difficult to counterfeit, then everybody would be able to print off their own money, and then we would actually have what's called inflation that we'll talk about later, and the whole system would just go bust. So for money to work as a medium for exchange, it must have these four characteristics. The next main aspect is it must work as a store of wealth. So under the barter system, you have to trade one good for another one right now. If I wanted to obtain a bike, I would have to trade, say, a kayak for a bike. And I have to trade one for the other right here, right now. And you never get to really hold on to it. But with money, as a store of wealth, you get to sell a good and retain the money until needed. So let's say you have a bike and you wanted a kayak. And under the barter system, you'd have to trade a bike for a kayak right then and there. But let's say that under the money system, you can actually sell your bike, hold on to that money for a while, maybe save up a little bit more, and turn around and buy a better kayak later on. But it works because you get to store that wealth. It's not like the barter system where you trade one good for another one and you have to have it right then and right there, right now. But with money, you can buy or sell it, or you can sell a good, retain that money for a while, keep it as a store of wealth, and then buy something else with it later. So something interesting about money is like the dollar bill system in the United States. Money has very little to no intrinsic value. Well, what does intrinsic value mean? It is the value of all the parts that make it up. So if we think about, say, a dollar bill, what really goes into a dollar bill? Special ink, a printing press, and special paper. So we have special paper and special ink. Do you think that special paper and special ink really costs all that much money to make? It really doesn't. A dollar bill is actually practically worthless. If you could actually take a dollar bill and you wanted to go sell it for its parts, it would be worth literally pennies on the dollar, I guess you could say, because it has no intrinsic value. The parts that make up the dollar bill are very, very small. So a dollar bill has absolutely no value except for the fact that the government gives it value. So you basically a dollar bill would be worth about as much as a mail order catalog if you were to actually look at just the parts it's made up of. But because the government backs it and the government says that it's worth something, and because of that legal tender, which we'll talk about here in a little while, we find that the dollar bill is that the value of the dollar bill is only what the government says the value of the dollar bill is, and it has no intrinsic value. And for money to work as a store of wealth, it must remain constant in value. It must remain where the rate of inflation must be low and consistent for it to work as a store of value. So the value of a dollar needs to remain constant. What does that mean? That means if I wanted to go buy a bag of chips from a vending machine, then today, and it cost me 50 cents, then I need to be able to go buy that same bag of chips tomorrow for 50 cents. It must remain constant in value. We can't have it to where I go buy a 50-cent bag of chips today, and tomorrow it's 75 cents, and the next day it's $1, and the next day it's $1.25. And because of its increasing so fast, then that actually is indicating to me that the dollar is worth more today because I can buy more stuff with it today. I can buy 2 bags of chips with it today, whereas in 2 days, I can only buy 1 bag of chips. So for money to work as a store of wealth, it must remain constant in value, where the rate of inflation must be consistent and low, meaning that I should be able to buy the same amount today as I can in a week or a year from now. We understand that because of inflation, that we'll actually talk about in a little bit, that the value of the dollar does decrease over time. The purchasing power of it does decrease. But we need it to remain at least constant in value enough to where we can still maintain a store of wealth, to where we can turn around and buy that, say, that kayak today, or we could save up for that kayak today, and then in 10 days that kayak's still the same price. Because if we have the price of goods increasing very rapidly, we have what would be called hyperinflation, which we'll talk about later, and then people start ditching their money for precious metals and items that they believe are not going to lose value. It also needs to be a basis for record keeping. So it's a basis for accounting. And chances are you're going to have an accounting class here at Casper College. And if you have this accounting class, it's looking at how is money moving more or less from whenever you're buying goods to selling goods. How is it moving kind of within the company? You have to account for that money. So for money to be a basis for record keeping, it must be a basis for accounting. So how many of y'all have ever thought about it? Whenever you're writing a check or you swipe a debit card, what essentially happens? When you go to write a check or you swipe a debit card, what it does is it sends a instruction to your bank for them to take money out of your account and put it in somebody else's. So if you go ahead and you write out that check or you swipe that debit card, they take money out of your account, put it in somebody else's. Did any coin or currency ever actually exchange hands? Did you ever hand somebody else money? And in actually dollar bills and coins and currency? No, you didn't. You just simply wrote a check. But hey, they got their money. They got your money. You don't have as much money. They now have the appropriate amount of money. And you've never pulled out your wallet and actually handed them a dollar bill or even a penny. Well, that's done because it's conducted by a monetary unit of account. It is a basis for record keeping. The bank keeps a record on how much is in your account, and then whenever you turn around and you write a check, it takes the money out of your account and now debits the amount that's in your account and puts it in somebody else's. It credits it to them, and now everybody's happy. But it's done because of a monetary unit of account. They're looking at how much money you have and accounting for it, but no coin or currency has ever exchanged hands. And for money to one of the primary principles of money is so that way you can keep this record, where you don't have to carry around all of the money that you personally have in your wallet at all times. So that way you can put some in the bank and just instruct the bank to transfer it. This is becoming more and more important with the use of, say, credit and debit cards. Because with credit and debit cards, you just swipe your card and it automatically starts transferring money. And it's never done with any coins or currency or anything like that, but everything is done by this monetary unit of account whenever you swipe a credit card or a debit card or even write a check for the most part. With automatic payroll, if you're ever on automatic payroll, at the end of the month you open up your account, you look on your phone and you say, oh look, I got paid $500 today. Well, that's all done through units of account. It's all done through this monetary unit of account. And you never actually see that $500 in your hand. You'll see it in your account balance because it's being accounted for through the accounting aspect of it, but you never actually see that currency unless you go and withdraw it from your account. Or an e-banking. Because of e-banking, automatic payroll, credit and debit cards, we see that the use of coins and currency starts decreasing, but we still have the same amount of transactions, which leads to making this more and more important. This basis for record keeping and this basis for accounting is becoming more and more important the more we deal with electronic-based units of account. So what backs money? What would you do without money? What if tomorrow a dollar bill that you had in your wallet wasn't worth anything? What if you couldn't buy anything with it tomorrow? Well, why do you get to buy anything with it today? It's just a piece of paper, right? Why is it of any kind of value? We've already said that it has no intrinsic value because that piece of paper is basically worthless. But it has value, and that value is the amount that's written on the dollar bill or on that $100 bill or $50 bill or $1,000 bill if you have one. So why is it that a piece of paper which has no intrinsic value is worth something? What is backing that money? Well, first off, it's the government. The United States government issues this fiat. What does fiat mean? A fiat is a legal decree by the government. The United States government, if you ever pull out any coins or any currency, pull out a dollar bill one of these days and look at it. It should say something to the note of, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, or private and public, however it's written. So it's saying that this dollar bill has value because of this note right here, because it says this is legal tender. And because of this fiat statement, this legal decree by the government, it is saying that a dollar bill is worth $1. And the government is saying it is. So what would happen if the government didn't say it was worth $1? Well, that thing would be worth about as much as a sheet of paper, which isn't hardly worth much. But because the United States government put this legal decree on there, it is now backing that money. It is now saying that that money is worth something. It has that value. Well, what happens if everybody just kind of stops using it? What if I personally wanted to say, I'm not accepting dollar bills anymore. You now have to pay me in this other type of currency. I live in the United States, but I'm not accepting US dollars anymore. Well, that kind of breaks that universal acceptance. See, a dollar bill works really well, or a currency works really well, and money works really well whenever it's universally accepted. Whenever you have the common understanding that because I'm getting this money or I get paid this money from my employer, I can use it anywhere else. And because of that universal acceptance, it really goes to kind of back that money up. But what if somebody like me said, no, I'm just not accepting a dollar bill anymore. You have to pay me in something else. Well, the government steps in. And because of this legal decree, because of this fiat, and it says that it's for all debts, public and private, within the United States, now I'm outside of the law. I would basically be an outlaw because I'm not accepting that money anymore. And if I decide that I live in the United States where I'm not accepting the dollar bill, then what that means is I can no longer charge for interest, and I can no longer sue for non-payment. So if you're within the United States and you want to get paid, you kind of need to accept, and you must accept, the dollar bill. Otherwise, if you go to collect the money that's owed to you and you try to sue them for them not paying you back, you can't do it anymore, because in the United States it says you must accept the dollar bill because of this legal decree. And if you tried to charge for inflation on a debt and they said, no, we want to get paid in this other type of currency, well, technically they can't charge for interest or sue for non-payment anymore. So because of that, and because of the common understanding that everybody wants to get their money within the United States, the dollar bill has become universally accepted because the government backs it up, and it is backed by the government. And it has value because the United States government says it does. So let's talk about inflation. We kind of mentioned it back over here whenever we said it needs to be a store of wealth. Whenever we said the rate of inflation must be low and consistent. What exactly is inflation? Inflation means a decrease in the purchasing power. Well, what is purchasing power? Purchasing power is the value of all the goods that you can buy. So, if I pulled out $1, a dollar bill, and today I could buy 2 bags of chips with the dollar bill. And tomorrow I can only buy 1.5 bags of chips. So the amount of goods that I was able to buy today has now decreased tomorrow. So that means that my purchasing power is now decreased. I can buy less tomorrow than what I could today. That is a decrease in purchasing power, because the purchasing power is how many goods can you buy. It's often measured in a basket of goods, a modern day basket of goods. How many pounds of flour, bread, and cheese can I buy? Is that more or less tomorrow? So purchasing power is the amount of goods that you can buy with a set amount of money. So let's say if we're dealing with the dollar bill, and today I can buy 1 bag of chips, tomorrow I can only buy 1.5 bag of chips, and the next day I can only buy 1 bag of chips. Or sorry, I think I said that wrong. Today you can buy 2 bags of chips, tomorrow's 1.5, the next day is 1. So the amount of goods that you can buy through those 3 days is decreasing. So we have a decrease in the purchasing power. That's what inflation is a decrease in the purchasing power. So what we need is, in the United States, we're constantly faced with inflation. We try to keep inflation low, but we are faced with a steady rise in inflation. But because we keep the rate of inflation low and consistent, and just kind of on a steady rise rather than a drastic jump or anything like that, Americans have come to understand that yes, the dollar today is going to be worth less in the future because of inflation, but it's not going to be worth so much less that it's not a good store of wealth. So as a result, we must keep the rate of inflation low and consistent. Because what happens if we don't? If we don't keep inflation low and consistent, we go into what we call hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is when people begin to lose all faith in the currency. Right after World War II, after the fall of Germany, we found that the currency in Germany was basically worthless. And as the purchasing power of that dollar fell, of that currency fell, it took a lot more of that currency to be able to buy the same amount of goods. So let's say on one day, you could buy a loaf of bread with one of their units of currency. But by the end of the week, it now takes 100 units of that currency to buy that same loaf of bread. Where before it took 1, now it takes 100. So the purchasing power is falling. It takes a lot more to get the same amount of goods. Whenever that's happening on a daily basis, or a minute basis or a weekly basis, and the amount of goods that you are able to buy falls so quick in relative to the currency, then people begin to lose faith in that currency. So what happens if it took me, what would you do if today you could buy one bag of chips and tomorrow you could only buy a tenth of a bag of chips? Well, if you kind of understood that that was a trend of the way it was going, you would buy as many bags of chips now as you could, because the dollar is worth enough right now to where you can get one bag of chips, where tomorrow you might only be able to get a tenth or a half a bag of chips. So you buy all the chips today because you know the dollar isn't going to, or the money isn't going to buy it come tomorrow. So as a result, whenever you start facing this hyperinflation, people lose all faith in their currency and they start buying as many tangible goods as they can. They're going to try and buy any and all goods that they can today in order to avoid losing that purchasing power and not being able to buy as much in the future. They're going to trade all of their money that is inflating very drastically for as many tangible goods that they hope are going to keep their value as far as the purchasing power goes. So what happens whenever everybody starts understanding that I can't buy as much tomorrow as I can today? Well, then everybody makes a mad rush to the store today to buy as many goods as they can today. And because of that, the overall demand for those goods go up, so people raise the prices on them. Well, now the purchasing power has fallen even more, so people are buying even faster, and the prices rise on the good again. So as a result, we have this vicious cycle during hyperinflation that is very hard to get out of, because as people start losing faith in the currency, they buy more things. As they buy more things, the prices go up. As the prices go up, it becomes more inflated, so people buy even more things, trying to ditch their money for the goods that they hope will maintain their value. But the main aspect of this video is to know the 3 different critical roles of money, as that it serves as a medium for exchange, a store of wealth, and a basis for record keeping. And that for money to be a good store of wealth, the inflation must remain fairly constant and remain fairly low. We also need to know that what backs money is the government, and we need to know exactly what money is. Money is not just simply a dollar bill or a euro or a Mexican peso or the Canadian dollar or the yen or anything of that nature, but it can be anything that is generally accepted and commonly used.